Hello, St. Marguerites. Happy anniversary. I'd like to share with you a few remembrances from the earliest days of St. Marguerites. I was assigned as an assistant at St. John Newman Parish in 1991. Father Jim Fennessy was the pastor there. We had 3,500 families on the books, and we had a church that could accommodate 800 people. So on Sundays, we had masses on the half hour alternating between the church and the school cafeteria. The parking lot was a mess. It was clear to Father Jim that something had to be done, and he decided that the best thing to do would be to split the parish by starting a new mission. I was asked to spearhead that project, and Deacon Gary Womack from St. John's was extremely helpful in negotiating all of the legal requirements and doing all of that kind of paperwork for us. He was still assigned, however, to St. John's. We began by renting a storefront on Lawrenceville Highway. It was a space that had previously been used by a bank as a check clearinghouse. And so there were many computers that had been in there, and computer wires hung from the ceiling everywhere. We had to get in there and clean that all up. We were given $20,000 from St. John's, and with that we bought supplies and chairs that we could use for the church. Parishioners were really generous with their time and talent. Shirley Roderick became the parish secretary. Other members signed up to teach the kids, to do maintenance and construction and cleaning every week, and even to set up for the services. Soon we were ready to hold our first service, and that first Sunday we had 125 families signed up as members of this mission. We still didn't have a name. We were just the mission on Lawrenceville Highway. We had a lectionary-based program for the kids, and every Saturday night when we had our vigil service, we were accompanied by music that came through the walls from Jazzercise, which was in the storefront right next to us. Still, we grew rapidly. There was a great spirit of community there. We would occasionally clear all of the chairs and set up tables for community activities and for meals. People were generous with their donations, but our single biggest contributor was Kroger Markets. They gave us a percentage of the register tapes that people brought us from their weekly grocery purchases. We did a lot of fundraisers there also. I even did some sewing projects to raise money for the new church. Soon we were able to buy a house that would serve as a rectory. To save money there was, of course, no housekeeper. I did all of the cleaning, cooking, the maintenance, and even hauling the trash. Soon, though, somebody stepped up to take care of the lawns for me. Within 3 years, we had grown to 750 families. By then, we had expanded into the former Jazzercise space, which we made into a classroom wing. We began the process of purchasing property for a permanent site. We managed to find a space of about 10 acres adjacent to the rectory, and we negotiated with the owners of several different portions of that lot to cobble together a space that was suitable enough for a new church. Parishioners got on the lot and started cleaning away the brush. They even discovered a tractor that had been lost within the overgrowth. We put up a sign by the road announcing that this would be the site of the new church, and we held outdoor services there and picnics. I had been teaching in the Diocesan Deacon Formation Program, and when the class were ordained, 5 members wanted to be assigned to St. Marguerite's. We took them all on until 2 of them found places in other churches, leaving us with 3 deacons, Bart DeSandre, Bill Maddox, and Tim Kirksey, wonderful men deeply devoted to God and to the church. We had a great music ministry also, formed around a donated organ. We created a building design committee. I got hold of bulletins from several other churches that had pictures of their churches on the covers, and I passed these out to the committee. They were going to look them over and decide what they liked about them and what they didn't like, and from that conversation, we developed ideas about what we wanted, and we shared that with the architect that we hired. I went around to thrift stores to find all kinds of things that we needed for vessels and other implements that the church required. On the property that we purchased, which had been a farm, there still stood a farmhouse in rather dilapidated condition, but we converted it into a studio where John and Peggy Plasma, who were professionals in the stained glass business, taught the skill to our parishioners. At first, they created simple little projects like window dazzlers, and they invested that money that they made from that into supplies for bigger projects. The plan was to have all of the stained glass windows for the new church created by the parishioners. I decided that it should be the people who would pick the name. So I got ideas from the different members and I set up an election. Everyone who had been able to receive First Communion, even the little ones, were allowed to vote. Now, many of our members had contact with the Grey Nuns from St. John Newman's School. We learned that St.Marguerite Duville was on the pathway to being canonized as a saint. The congregation overwhelmingly voted to choose her as our patron. And so St.Marguerite Duville Mission became the second church in the world to be named after her. Within a very short time, we were able to cover all of the monthly expenses of the church, and so we were named as a parish in our own right, and I became the founding pastor. Within 3 years of the creation of the mission, we were a parish. My dominant memory of that period was a happy one of people who really took ownership of their church. I wanted to allow people to steer the future of the parish, and so they did. They stepped up and did it well. I was able to trust the people of the church, and that helped us to grow by word of mouth as word of a very happy parish spread throughout the region. And so from there we went on, and the church eventually was built, as you certainly have known and appreciated. And so I congratulate you as you celebrate 30 years of St. Marguerite Duville. And I hope that you will continue to be a church that is a congregation of the people of God. God bless you.
You asked a question. We came in '86, and again, I'll go revert back to Father Paul Brown, who was at St. John Newman. You go to church there, and it was shades of St. Lawrence now. The amount of families is 3,000. I don't know how many families. I don't know if you guys were going there at the time.
Oh, yeah.
That's 3,000.
It was ridiculous. You go in there on a Sunday morning, you couldn't get in the place. And then they started moving you down, and it just kept going and going and going, and they had to do something. So at the time, if I recall, they came in and they built St. Stephen the Martyr,
Yeah.
St. Marguerite, and St.
Stevens?
St. Stephen's, yeah.
The
Stephen
one-
the Martyr.
one of-
Went out in '78.
St. Oliver.
Oliver.
St. Oliver Plunket was the 3 churches broke off of that. And
That's the same reason why, Barry, same reason why we started at Storefront, because you'd have to get to church a half hour early to get a seat.
if you wanted to be upstairs, then they had like two other masses going on at the
Yeah,
same
so
time,
that's-
down in like a cafeteria.
St. John
We
Newman,
spent
yes.
Christmas one time down
We
there
did too.
with the speakers.
I think it was a mission.
Mission of St. John Newman.
St. John Newman, and then
But I remember moving from St. John Newman here. We were still a storefront, and we had not quite been a parish, but it was shortly thereafter we became a parish.
correct.
A mission is a satellite office of the parish, and it's recognized as part of the original parish. When you become a parish, you're separated from the original parish. The number of people that were in the mission became enough to form a parish that could afford to pay its own bills.
Started
It was
in
96 and I think it was 94.
91 maybe,
You talking about the church proper?
No,
The idea
we
of
moved-
but yeah, 1994. He was, Father Don stole the storefront.
Yeah, the old church was 29 in Huff, and we were in the building closest to Huff Road.
It was just a big.
It was just a big open area, and they had to go in.
And there were some offices there.
We had to go in, redo some of the offices and make offices, and then
because we were expanding so fast. When we got done tearing the walls out of the one portion of the storefront, well, we got to have room for a CCD. So we needed the other portion on the other part of the storefront. There was another section of it, but we couldn't tear that wall out because that was a firewall. So it says, Donna says, we're gonna have to go outside and go around. And I said, we can't do that. I mean, if it's raining, because there was no canopy or anything. So we ended up just cutting a door through the wall. So you could see, we had a door there and it worked out really good because we built classrooms over in the second section. And then we had the door there to get in between.
Father Don, the pastor at that time, asked myself and Ron Redmond to build a tabernacle for the parish. And so Ron Redmond and I built the first tabernacle for the parish, which is made out of wood. We also built the holy oils holder, which is currently in the narthex on the wall.
Bill Bruton made the original tabernacle. Remember the one that used to sit there, all of wood? And so he made it and I finished it. And that, I think, is down in the,
Storage room?
over here at the priest, basement of the priest. The original tabernacle, if you want to see that, that was in the storefront.
And we used that tabernacle in the mission, and then we used it here when we first got here. And it was a wooden tabernacle. And then Ron Redmond built the cross that was on the outside of the church.
On the storefront, we had a cross up on top. So I made a cross because Father Don wanted one. So I made a cross and I put it up there and I stood back and, dang, that's nowhere big enough. So I had to crawl back up there, take it down, take it home, and put 2-foot extensions on both sides to make it bigger. And I cladded it with stainless steel plaques. And to this day, I still remember Bartles,
John and Barbara Bartles.
Barbara Bartles.
Yeah.
She came up and told me how gorgeous it was because when she'd go to church, the sun would hit it and it would just lit up because of the stainless steel.
He is,
He is. He's done a lot of
he sure has.
carpentry work. I mean, he built. I think he built the. He didn't build the altar, but he built. I think a lot of other structures.
The
that were up
lectern,
there. The
the
lectern,
ambo.
That is amazing.
and the place that holds the Bible now in front, and
Cool.
the Easter cross. He does a lot. Every time you see the Easter cross out there, that's what he did. That he built that and puts it in place, and
Wow.
he's done a whole lot. Yes.
Pardon?
Kids from the CCD?
When I told you when we got done with Mass, Don Carn would get up there and we would discuss things about what the church is going to do, how we're going to do it. And then he says, okay, we're going to have a poll.
That's right.
We're going to have a poll to see what we're going to name the church. So he gave us, 5 names?
I remember Transfiguration was on one of them.
5
And
names.
St.Marguerite was one.
So that's how the church got its name, because us original ones voted for St. Marguerite.
I was right in there, man.
I don't understand that. So anyways, that's how it got its name. not by the archdiocese.
We voted.
We voted on it.
And one of the things that stands out in my mind about at the storefront was the donuts and coffee after mass. And you got to really meet the people, get to know the people.
I think so, because that's, everybody after mass would stand in line to go through and get coffee and donuts, because we sat up behind the altar.
Yeah,
That's
And
right.
we all went through there, and you say, why did we stop? Because Father got new carpet.
Yep.
And he didn't want anything going on downstairs,
Yeah.
so, and that was Patty Hilltop and Kathy Carson. That was their thing.
One time we were at church, and I used to shop at that grocery store, and then they closed it, and we were at church, and my son and I think he was probably in middle school, elementary, whatever, and we were sitting here, and there was seats back in the back too, and so Matt says, "Mom, there's so and so," and I said, "Where?" He says, "Back there in the meat department," because that's where the meat department had been.
Skate and
What do you all
socialize.
remember the cedar meals we used to have
At the storefront.
at the storefront?
Um,
Yeah.
So the pots of whatever, very low key, nothing fancy.
Huh.
Soup mostly.
You were talking about when they had the Seder meals and that. And then I know it was at Winn-Dixie because the way that the panels and everything were in there. And they were trying to plug all the stuff into the, everybody came in with a closed, what do they call them? Bring
Crock pots.
Crock pots. That must have been 90 damn crock. So I ran over, went over to the office and they had them donated. They gave them cable and cords and stuff. And we got it. They had the meal, but it kept blowing fuses.
Yeah, I'm sure it did.
But John Bartles, again, he started it, and I remember him saying that this was God's calling, because he would be there every mass, set mass up, getting mass ready for everybody to come. He'd be there cleaning everything up.
They had three guys. I think Bartles helped them. And they had a picture of one of the magazines that shows the three guys, the custodians. And I think he was one of them.
But we started, if I remember correctly, a 9 o'clock mass. And then we became two churches because we got so big, we had to have two mass times.
Got it.
And that's when we started getting too big. So then we started tearing up, and you were there. We were tearing out walls, and I can still see all the electrical outlets and switches hanging from the ceiling. Because we had to have an electrician come in after we tore all the
Sure.
walls out. Everything was just hanging from the
Yes.
ceiling.
The damn portable walls.
Because it was at the storefront. And we sat on,
Plastic
Plastic
chairs.
Plastic
Well,
chairs.
chest, yeah, that's right,
Those were the most uncomfortable
Yes.
chairs.
yes.
I mean,
And we were packed in
we
there
were
all the time.
packed in.
We were packed, like sardines.
You
It
just
was
had
elbows to armpits.
Yes, that's right, that's right. And the folding chairs were like,
Right on top of.
yeah, right on top of each other.
So actually, we got to the point that there was no more expanding. I mean, we filled up that, it was a double section of the
Yeah.
storefront. After we tore, we actually had, over the years, they sealed one of the doors on the other store. They sealed it completely shut. We had to cut that open because of fire exit.
But I think we were there for several years.
You had to get to a certain number in the storefront to then qualify, as Bill said, to be a parish. And it was at that point then they said, okay, you're growing enough.
Because not only did we have to become large enough to become a parish, then they bought the property, but then we had to build the structure out there. So it took, a couple of years to build the structure and everything else. The archdiocese bought the land for us. But what's interesting is the original land was not what we see today. If you drive into the main parking lot or the main road, the property to the left, which is now Father Tommy's rectory, we only owned about 10 yards from that road into the property. We didn't own the rest of it. And the property to the right, if you look all the way over, I call it the third driveway, which is the old rectory, which is the Polish priest rectory right now. There was a house and property between that house and our property. So we owned about 30 yards or 40 yards to the right. If you drive into the property and you look to the right, there's a grove of trees that's over there. That's how far in we own. We didn't own anything else. And when Father Brendan Doyle came in, he was looking around and he started negotiating with the owner of that land, which was between our road and the parish, or the parish hall, the parish rectory. He started negotiating to buy that property. He then found that the rectory, which was again to the left as you drive in, all of that property came up for sale. So Brendan Doyle bought all of that property in there. And so that became, which the current footprint of the property we have now. And this was the reason they bought this property was because it was the only large vacant land that would be suitable to build a church and classroom area, although it was never designed as a school.
Bill Group was out here, he was in the beginning, because we were out here clearing the land before they had to do it, so he had his big tractor. Remember, he had the big tractor, and we go in, we're moving all this trash, and he got up on a concrete cinder block wall, and he stuck the tractor up there, and we couldn't get it off the wall.
A lot of people don't know that up on the lawn, there was a house up there. When they acquired this 13-acre property, there was a house. And John told me there was 2 houses, but I don't remember one. The priest house on the right side, they got that. And there was a house that was up on top that they did some of the stained glass in.
Parishioners.
Well, I thought it was cool about the horse barn down here. What was cool about the little white house, people didn't know that. You got these open fields and everything.
There's a pump house up at the top of the hill. I guess it was part of this. This was a farm or something up here at one time.
They were, you had on there, who were the originators? John Bartle, and Barbara Bartles, and Lyle, and Lucy King.
Yeah, Long Lucy.
Because
Yeah, Lyle.
I go over there, they were sitting up the altar, they were tearing the walls out. They were the ones that initiated this. They're the ones with the shovels digging the first plot for building this. Remember, we all signed the arch, the structural arch up here. Remember our name on it?
Bill.
Bill Bruton. Because he was father's right hand. John Bartles and Barbara Bartles were the
Key.
driving force
Yeah.
at St. Marguerite.
And so was
Lyle.
King.
Soon after we bought the property, they started a building committee. And there were some very excellent people on that building committee. I was amazed when I did join the building committee. I was the last person, I think, there. The quality and technical ability of the people that were there. I mean, they were engineers, they were contractors, they were plumbers, electricians, and Bill Gilman, who was a consulting engineer, headed up the building committee. And when the building committee designed the church, it was the church where we are now was actually designed as a temporary building. It was designed or built to be a dual purpose because the church eventually, when it got large enough, was going to build a regular church or a permanent church to the right. If you face the entranceway, to the right is in where that other building was going to be.
And the other reason that you have the church facing the way it is now was there was the long-term plan was if we were going to add school or if we were going to add anything else, it would come from the way we sit going out towards the road. Would be another section going that way. So almost forming like a cross because of what we had going back, the church here, and then going back out for if we ever needed to build more structure.
That brought up the controversy you wanted to talk about what we were going to put here. And that's like I told you, the arguments are going on in that parish with parishioners. And there's a certain sector that wanted to build a cathedral, and the other people wanted to put a multi-purpose building. And I think the consensus of opinion was multi-service building. But I think the dollar spoke, and this is what we got.
Like he says, this was supposed to be the, what do you want to call it, party area, not the church.
Yeah.
What do they call it?
Multi-purpose building.
Multi-purpose building. Because we're going to build a church somewhere else. That's why that field is still left open. And this was, originally, it was supposed to be like John Newman.
Right.
It was supposed to be round.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was supposed to be round and somehow, and then you'd have to go back to Bill Gillum?
Bruton.
Not Bruton, but Gillum, who was in charge
Yeah.
of the Dave Swin will know, who was in charge of design, why it changed, why it changed to the current church.
Well, I was still working when we bid the project as a supplier, and I remember looking at the blueprints on it, and I said, this is ridiculous. Number one, is that transformer out there? Why in the world would you put a damn 6-foot square box and stick it outside your front door?
In the front.
But it was there, and those are just questions. They had chandeliers in here where we don't have anything in the main concourse of church. Chandeliers hanging down.
Well, it was a mess, and if I believe correctly, they had to bring a dad from the diocese up to run roughshod over, because there was so much discussion of what they were gonna do, how they were gonna do it. Well, they had to bring somebody up who's done it before from the archdiocese, and he sat in all the meetings. And I think that's why it got straightened around as to this design.
And then some of the plans here would have been what you would see in a Protestant church, because actually Father Don was a convert to Catholicism, and so he had some different ideas, and they didn't really have a little chapel, and that was the bride's room, which didn't really fit, and different things like that. So
some of what held it up too was when Father Don, he had it totally different
Design. It was supposed
when Father,
to be a
it was
church.
supposed to be round, kind of like.
But Father Doyle wanted the traditional German style.
well, it was too late in the construction, so Father Doyle couldn't change it, but he came in and did some things differently to help turn it into more of a Catholic.
He wanted the
church.
traditional aisle
Mm-hmm.
all the way down. He didn't want the circle. He wanted the traditional,
Yeah, the amphitheater style was.
Yes, yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Couldn't think of the
and
name.
he wanted very, very traditional. In fact, it was pretty stark initially, because you
Yes.
didn't have the tabernacle wasn't behind the altar.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of off to the side, and you didn't have statues, and so it was a rather bland looking church.
Mm-hmm.
And it now looks a lot different and looks more like a Catholic church.
When Brendan Doyle came in, he was the one who got the second rectory and the additional property. He also built a garden outside that you see between the Father Tommy's rectory and the church. There are two structures, or two facilities in there. One is the grotto that's out there. The grotto was built as a Boy Scout Eagle project. There's also an outside altar that's out there. The altar was built by Ted Johns and myself, and Ron Redmond built all of the chairs, or the seating out there. There's also a circle that goes around the outside structure between circumventing the grotto and the altar area. And there are Stations of the Cross built out there, and the women of the parish built in concrete structures to represent a rosary going around that area.
A lot of people, they come into the church now and they see the stained glass windows and they assume that the windows were purchased. Okay, so the stained glass window project was started by Dave and Judy Adnich, who have since passed away. And Dave and Judy did a lot of stained glass work, and
There were 30 other parishioners.
And they started across the street as a little office complex, little office park. When you go out of the church and you make a left, and it's on the right hand side, there's heating and cooling companies in it. So they rented space back there, and that's where they did the bulk of the work.
The gal that first started there, the stained glass, but she was the one who started teaching everybody, because we weren't stained glass people, we were just ordinary parishioners. And so the first lady started teaching us how to do stained glass, how to cut it, how to wrap the edges, and how to solder it.
And I helped a couple times, and it's a very tedious job if you know anything about stained glass.
That Dave and Judy would talk about the hardest part of doing stained glass pictures are faces and hands. Everything else was done in stained glass shapes, but the faces and hands had to be hand painted and had to be fired separately. And
When it came to do the actual drawings of the saints and
The faces.
and the faithful, yeah, John and Peggy Plasman's daughter, Jessica, did all the drawings and the sketches for that. So when you look at all the stained glass windows in the church, every single one of them was made and constructed by the parishioners and set aside until the contractors, when they built the church was still basically coming up out of the ground at that point. And the contractors put those windows in, and everything fit according to what Dave told me. Those windows fit exactly.
The people that worked on the stained glass windows, when we did that, we used to do it in the little White House. That we tore down. That's where we had our first picnic, remember, to get money in?
Remember that, but I
We had a
remember the
picnic at the old White House. Remember that? We had the Wheel of Fortune you had to spin at, and that was the youth group threw that on. So we had the at the White House, and we turned that into the stained glass. And then they decided that they're going to tear the building down without telling anybody. So we ended up having to move what we had left over into the rentals across the street to finish doing stained glass. And that was John Plasma. The windows, the upper level, you got the cross and circle of the fleur de lis and anointing the sick, purple stole, baptism, confirmation. I don't know about the dove. I don't have dove listed.
Well, maybe.
Oh, on the big window back.
Yeah.
Yeah, John did that.
And Dave and Judy, while that was going on, Dave and Judy at their house built the big, I forget what John called it, above the altar, the big round. They did that themselves. That was done at their house.
if you take a look at the altar and you take a look near the ceiling, there's a round circle with some stained glass in there. Well, we built that stained glass parts. It's in 4 parts, and we built each 4 parts. Well, Dave comes to the committee and says, we don't know, we know what the structural design for that circle is, but we don't know the exact measurement. So someone is going to have to climb up there and measure the circle. Well, at that time, we still had all the structural steel and scaffolding in there because they're still putting in the lights and ceiling. And so we drew straws as to who was going to have to climb up there, and I lost. I
won.
I lost. So I had
to be doing that today, climbing up there.
Oh, I had to climb all the way up there, all the way to the top of the ceiling, and measure the width of the circle.
We were supporting you, remember?
So all of the stained glass was done by the parishioners, and it took about 18 months to 2 years to complete the project.
Father Doyle went in there one day. Kenny Diss was here at that time, and him and Kenny and John Kramer, they got together, and they decided, Father Doyle said, within a year we're going to have a kitchen and the hall's going to be finished out. So they went, and within a year they had the whole thing finished. You know, that was plans down the road, but he wanted to make it quicker. He said we need to, and that was to bring everybody into one place. And the patio was this big. You know, it was very small. If you go out there and look, you can actually see the difference in the concrete where they expanded out the patio. A lot of good events out there. You know, just
One thing about Father Doyle was the kitchen. And he wanted to have something downstairs in the hall, and he was adamant about putting in the facilities, which in the long run worked out very well. We have probably, I haven't seen others, but we've been told we have the best kitchen north of downtown, if there's anything better. Some of the newer ones probably, but fully stocked freezer, everything that went in, grills, stoves, anything you needed, hot box. He had he drew it all out, and it was an all new equipment. He went out and negotiated used equipment to bring in, and the stove that is still down there was brought in, used, and maybe the hot box. The refrigerator is an original old piece, so we just now, this year, replaced the freezer. So an old freezer that he bought from somebody lasted almost 30 years.
Yeah, I remember in some of the discussions when we talk about the kitchen, he brought in experts to talk about what we needed as for a commercial kitchen. And I agree, he was really adamant about making sure that we had at that time, a state-of-the-art kitchen with what we needed to do, because he envisioned that hall being what it is today.
Look at your kitchen here. It's another point of example. When we were doing maintenance after the flood, or before the flood, and people come in, contractors come in, they worked on other churches. No church in this city had a kitchen the size of this thing. And it had equipment in there. You would need a tilt skillet that makes soup in. You know, this damn thing this big around. But they put every bit of it in there.
We had a great time. We would have to start with mass outside in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah. Well, we had some Oktoberfest because the hall downstairs was just poured concrete walls. There was nothing there was no kitchen, there was nothing. So we had a couple of Oktoberfests here, and I remember having them.
The church wasn't even completed.
We had them as certain people over in Flowers Crossing. We would do them over at their clubhouse.
Yes, we did do that a couple
And
of
we
years.
did several of those. Those are memories I have, doing stuff out on the lawn.
Kenny Disk is is the person who moved the tabernacle to the middle of the.
Kenny bought that. He found that they found it somewhere. And if you look at it, it's so intricate the way it works with the key. It's got all kind of gear. Between Kenny and Father Doyle, they rebuilt that thing, and they had it working, and it works flawlessly. And they mounted it.
I know we helped buy a scary St.Marguerite one time, and everybody put it away and put it in storage because after the artist, whoever designed it, it was too lifelike scary. It looked like Halloween instead of
I remember the few members of the parish who really were the ones that made everything happen. It wasn't a lot of people. It was, I call them the vital few, that really put together and were the ones that Father Don and Brenda Doyle, Father Doyle, relied on to get things done. And it was a struggle sometimes to get everybody together to do the stuff, but it was those people who moved in, whether it was the building committee, whether it was the stained glass committee, or whatever we needed done to get the parish up and running. Father Don was an interesting character. He did a lot in starting up the storefront and then getting the construction of the parish done.
Father Don Karen. He was the first priest, and he was awesome.
Awesome.
He was an excellent priest. As Ron or somebody said, he was a history teacher. And his homilies and his mass, it was just so like down to earth or whatever. It was
Relatable.
like, yes, he was awesome.
Father Don was at St. John Newman as the proconvicar. And so they announced that they were going to start St.Marguerite. Father Don was going to come over to be the head, because everybody loved Father Don. So it wasn't hard to see people, move to follow him.
We kept hearing about Father Don, and we started going there. I found that what they're saying, that his homilies were awesome, very good, but reminiscent of Father Paul Reynolds. And Father Paul Reynolds, if you recall, went on into hierarchy as the archdiocese. I think it was
He was the second best priest.
Yes.
in the
he
area.
was, yes, without
Was it his homily he gave it, and you talked about when he was adopted?
Yes.
Everybody was crying during this.
Yes.
Wow.
Incredible.
It was good. He was good.
He was
Now I
so
think he's in
good.
New Jersey.
He was so good that we couldn't tear out walls fast enough because we were expanding. They come in, they would be standing around the outside.
The discrepancy or the problem we had with Father Don on the steeple and the direction the altar was going to be?
I don't remember that. I'm glad you do.
Oh, yeah. You remember, the church is this way. We had the altar up here. He comes in and says, no, I want to put the altar here.
Oh, on this.
On the side. So we'd walk in and the center aisle would be down here. I mean, the building,
Yeah, but you'd have people way over there while you're preaching.
the building committee had a fit.
Okay.
I must have been traveling that meeting.
You were the lead spokesperson for why we weren't going to have it. Oh, I remember that.
I was?
Oh, yes, you were. And then the steeple.
Good for me.
Do you remember the controversy of the steeple? We had a rendering
Yeah.
of what the church was going to look like, and we had the discrepancy between where he wanted the steeple and where the parish council, the building committee wanted to see. So he put a tree hiding the top of the front of the building.
So Father Don and the Archdiocese didn't have exactly the same, vision in terms of what it took to run the parish and what it took to, be a pastor. And so he left, and he wasn't, very happy about leaving. And I remember particularly that when Father, he had some issues with the Vicar General. And so at one of the homilies, his last homily, he made some very anti-archdiocesan comments.
And we all, I'm sure everybody cried the day he was in the church storefront telling us he was leaving, because we were all devastated.
And then he left, and then Brenda Doyle, who was a pastor in a small parish up north, he became the pastor of St.Marguerite DeVille.
So Doyle took over right at the transition.
Oh,
When
okay.
we moved into the new
Okay.
church. So he's the first one here.
And that then left a little bit of poison for Father Doyle. So when Father Doyle walked in the door, there were a lot of people that were against him. He came in, hi, I'm, been sitting here by the Vicar General, and it was like, duh, that didn't sit well. So he had a rough start, from that standpoint. But actually, interesting story, and this came straight from Father Doyle, is that he actually turned the job down once. And so the Archbishop, said, you've got to take it. So he sent the Vicar General up to North Georgia, where Father Doyle was, and said, come here, I want to show you the plans for the church. And Doyle said, I don't know that I want to. He says, this is going to be your parish.
Yeah, Father Doyle came
95, because he was here for 10 years.
and you see pictures of him, people that knew him. We go up to he has an Irish pub up in Blue Ridge, so we go up there sometimes for St. Patrick's Day, and there's old pictures on the wall of him during his ordination and talking to people up there at his pub. He's got a lot of memorabilia hanging on his walls and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people up there, I said, they look and they go, is that the same guy? And I go, yeah. He was a priest.
He was the one, for instance, he was the one who came in, and remember we went to St. Andrews, was it, and got all the bleachers out of the church?
Yeah.
Was it St. Andrews?
Yeah. And
So, because they were free, and then we set up out here in the barn, the horse barn, we set up an assembly line, because we're gonna refinish all the pews, so we can use it in a new church. And then to come find out, they weren't real wood, they were veneer, and half the veneer was missing.
And we were storing them in that guy's storage.
We're still, yeah, Burke
Burke's storage.
Burke's stored up on the second story. But anyways, we went in there and we all doing this, and I says, he was all set, and Dave Radersdorf got the material to finish everything. The bolts, if you will, to all the finish, he got that. And then I went in and told Doyle, we can't use these things. And he went through why we can't, we got them, and I says, we can't use them, it'd take us forever, and it looked like pits after we got done. He said, okay.
Father Brendan Doyle found and or acquired this antique tabernacle, which I think the tabernacle was at least 100 years old. And Kenny Disk, a parishioner, was the one who put the tabernacle in the wall that's in the back there. But the problem they had with the tabernacle, because it was so old, they didn't have a proper key for it. And so either Kenny or Father Doyle went out and found a really old key, locksmith who happened to have two keys that would fit that lock, and he was able to make locks for that. And but that was recessed by Kenny Disk, and it was trying to find the key because the tabernacle was so old.
He was very kind of a shy kind of a fella. Always his homily, it was always a written homily, and he would read his homily. He was, I'm not going to say he was hard to get along with, but you had to know him. You had to know him. You know, he was
your stereotypical Irishman.
Irish priest.
Irishman.
You got to ask him
But he was a
3
great guy.
times
He
the
was,
same question,
Yep.
and get a no twice before you get a yes.
You knew what he wanted.
Oh, yeah, and quite frankly, I really liked him, but he was
I did
either
too.
my way
Or the highway.
or the highway. No, I
Doyle,
don't.
you're right, Doyle was direct.
Oh, boy.
When he wanted to be direct, he could be direct. He was, you know, the guy is your best buddy when you're talking to him. When you put him up on the altar, and he was a different guy.
Yeah.
He was very solid.
I remember him telling some people to get out of church, they
Control their child.
couldn't control their kids.
Yeah.
And it was like, half of the group was like, yeah, and half of the group was like, oh my God.
Well, what about when people came in late a lot?
Yeah.
And they do
Oh, yeah.
here
Oh,
too.
yeah.
And finally one day he said, Mass starts at 8:30, not 8:45.
She told us ushers to close those doors, don't let it stand in front of the doors. So they don't
Don't
Make them
let,
go around.
and don't let people get out of here before it's finished.
Yeah, that's right.
These
Yeah,
back
you're allowed to
doors,
leave.
you just stand in the door and don't let them get out.
But the story about him that is in my heart a lot was that Mom wanted to be buried out of Christ the King. So it was hard to get scheduled at Christ the King. So I went to Father Doyle and I said, I know you got good connections downtown. I said, I talked to him and I said, she really would like to be buried at Christ the King. Can you do anything about that? And can you perform the Mass, celebrate the Mass? And he said, sure. Then just what's the date and everything. So I told him, as it turned out, it was March 1st was going to be the funeral. So he made all the arrangements for that. And then there was an issue about my sister and her daughter and couldn't make it. And so I called him back up and I said, God, I bet this is impossible, but can Mom be buried on March 2nd? He says, I'll take care of it. I don't know what he did. I don't know how, like that. Bingo. Within an hour or so, we got the Mass and got it set up, and he had that kind of pull, and did a beautiful job on that, on it. And he was a highly dedicated individual. He could be rather abrupt at times. One of my other stories about him was the storefront was infested with rats and bugs and everything. So St. Vincent de Paul, which I've been a member of since the church started here in '93, and we had a food pantry there that would take and deliver to people who would go out on visits, home visits. It's a small food pantry, and rats got into it and were getting into the offices. And so he called me in. He's, very, he was pretty stern. Food pantry goes, and I said, well, what are we going to do? That's how we feed it and feed people. And he says, come up with an alternative. He said, I'll support what alternative that you have. So I said, okay. So I talked with Mayor Espinoza again. And we said, well, why don't we do a Thanksgiving Day program? And so we hashed it out, and there was some naysayers among that group, but we hashed it all out. I went back to him and I said, Father Doyle, we'd like to do a Thanksgiving dinner program where we'll have parishioners bring food into the church, and then we'll send them out on home visits to deliver the food to the parishioners. That started the Thanksgiving dinner program that's here today, some 30 years later. And then he says, we need to do something for Christmas. So that started the Angel Tree program. So it came from Father Doyle. They were kicking us out of the storefront to get a place. But those two programs have been along for a long time. So
Father Doyle was the chaplain for the City of Atlanta Police Department, and he used to frequently take helicopter rides with the police department.
But he said if he was going to be a chaplain for the police department, he was going to do everything they did. So the policemen have to go through a drill where they wear a bulletproof vest and they get shot. Now it's with a lesser grams in the bullet, okay, but they have to take a bullet to the chest. And Father Doyle said, strap me up. So he actually got shot in the chest. I saw him after that. He was like, you know, a little sore right there. But he was that dedicated. There'd be sometimes, I know one time he came over, sometimes he was late to mass here during the week because he was out with the police family because somebody got injured or killed or whatever like that. So I can remember a lot of times coming back. He'd come in, he looked like he'd been out all night, which he had. Hair was all messed up. Come running in about 15 minutes late to mass. And he never told us why. He never made excuses. He just said, you know, just started with the mass and went on from there. So, you know, a highly dedicated individual.
And he did probably of the four pastors we've had, I think structurally he made the most impact on the parish. He bought the property, he set up the garden that's out there, he arranged for the stained glass, he bought the house that was between us so that we would have a place to grow.
And that was the reason why he was transferred from where he was to come here, because the Archbishop, or at least the diocese, knew that he was into construction and had done a lot of things at other parishes. So when he came in, that's when it really fueled getting this structure done. He took that over, and he had the experience that we needed to get this completed.
And then he left from here to go over to the parish in Marietta, which was running into some financial problems.
Then Father Jim Harrison came in, and Father Jim, coincidentally, was in education as a priest. He was the one that opened St. Pius, and in 1958.
He was his principal.
And it was neat when he came here because he was my principal.
So naturally, I went to St. Pius. And Father Jim was a founding pastor principal there. And he was a very strict, in control kind of a person. I didn't fit the prototype of the St. Pius student, so I lasted about 3 months at St. Pius. And at the beginning of the Christmas break, he told me, I'm going to call your parents and tell them that you're not coming back to St. Pius. You know, cradle Catholic family, brother, you know, sisters, 4 sisters, all Catholic, all beautiful, and like that. And I'm kicked out of St. Pius. And then he came back, and then he was transferred over here. So I reintroduced myself to him. And I'll never forget what he told me. He says, "Oh, well, don't feel bad about that." He said, "I kicked out the pastor in Transfiguration too." You know, he was always smiling. Father Jim always smiled. And so at St. Pius, all the students called him Happy Harry. You know, because he was smiling when he kicked me out of school. I'm going to call your parents, and you're not coming back. But anyway, I was telling that to Charles, his younger brother, and his wife, and she went to St. Pius. And I said, yeah, we used to call him, you know, Happy Harry. And she laughed, and she said, you know what the girls called him? And I said, no. And she said, oh, Father, what a shame. And I said, what?
He was a nice looking.
He was if you look in the recent Georgia Bulletin, there's a picture of him when he was a young man. And he was nice, you know, nice, thick-headed, dark hair, athletic build. So, you know, all the female students there thought he was just handsome as the devil. So anyway, that's a little bad, and he knows that story. So
where Brendan Doyle's expertise was in the area of building and finance, Father Harrison was more of a spiritual priest, and not so much in the area of construction or expansion. He was more of a spiritual priest.
He was trusting of his committees, of his parish council. he listened, he had right to full veto, but he, on the councils where when I was on the parish council, it was, we would sit there and there were suggestions and he'd think and he'd say, okay, or he would ask questions, but eventually, if it was for the betterment of the parish, he would go with it. And he listened to the ideas, what we thought and how we would tackle something. And usually would say, okay, or let's do it just a little bit different.
He was more of a manager or of the parish than he was an active participant in directing things. So he had committees and that type of stuff that he would rely on to do the work or give him ideas of what he thought should happen.
I remember when Father Jim came in 2005, and he had come from St. Catherine's of Siena, and they were going through a building project of their own up there.
The school.
So at that time, Father Doyle was here, and St. Catherine's was going through a school up there, and Father Jim at that time was probably in his early 70s maybe, and it looked like it was going to overwhelm him a little bit. So because Father Doyle had gone through
Business.
he had a business degree, they thought, let's bring him down here, and or bring Father Jim here, and we'll send Father Doyle to St. Catherine's to help with that project. So that was the first, and I
Which
think
neither one of them were happy about.
no, and I remember Leo telling you knew he was coming, right? Father Jim was coming here. Did you know that?
Well, I knew that there was going to be a transfer. There was an issue that they had, not as much with the building of the church financially, but with the boy, this is really talking out of school. So, and this came from Father Harrison, okay, and Father Doyle. So, Father Jim wanted to do things one way, and the sisters wanted to do something another way, and they butted heads really bad. And the sisters went to the archdiocese and said, we're pulling out unless such and such occurs, and they didn't want Father Jim there. And so they had a real big confab about it, and so Father Jim got moved from there to here, and he laughingly told me one time, he says, I got myself and the head of the Archdiocese of Schools fired over my disagreement with the order, with his sisters. But Father Jim actually had a faith crisis. He lost a niece and couldn't through taking her own life, and he couldn't do anything about it, and that gave him a real crisis. So it just gives me chills to even think about it. So he actually left the priesthood for 25 years and took a sabbatical. And of course he's enriched in the Atlanta families and the archdiocese. So when his mother was dying, and again he'd been out, he retired as the principal of a Cobb County high school, had a large retirement fund from them. And when his mother was dying, not all, but many of his priest brothers all came to console him. And he realized that he missed that part of his life. And so that helped him to think, maybe I need to be a priest again. So after 25 years, which is unheard of, because if you take a sabbatical for a year or more, you never come back. I mean, that's generally the rule of thumb it goes. 25 years, he came back, became a priest.
Father Jim was the father.
That's right.
But they didn't like him writing checks in the front office.
Giving away money.
Giving away money, he used to.
Yeah, I have
He
a
had a heart of
question.
gold. I mean, it was like, you know what, you need money, how much you need money?
But that, and I understand their point, it created some security issues.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, did it
Because
ever.
people came to the door saying, I want money.
Yeah.
And not leave.
like his smile. He always had a,
Yeah.
and he always had a good,
Always-
always had a good sermon. Very, very good with kids, and he always could remember your name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Always knew your name.
Brother Jim always says, I'm not gonna change things, I'm gonna keep things the way they are, everything's going smooth. If he knew you could do something, he's gonna pound you right there. We gotta cut that tree bump, we gotta move this over here.
He was a good guy, you're right.
Yeah.
He let everybody do their thing.
Yeah.
And he would suggest things that needed to be done.
Always at Christmas time, there was the erection of the Christmas tree in the narthex. And that was, you remember that? God, that was just,
Oh, yeah.
KFC did it. And that thing was what? 25,
Huge.
whatever.
It was tall.
Huge. And all the arms had to be put in, and the whole KFC crowd would come in there at night.
the wives.
Women would fluff up all the
Branches.
Yeah, the last year we did it, we got it done, and he said something about decorated, and Father Jim said, "Don't worry about it. The youth group will take care of it." And they didn't show up. The next day, he had about 5 guys that said, "Take it down."
He would be at the in the narthex greeting
Yep.
greeting people as they came in. And if I remember correctly, he was usually fully dressed in his robe.
Yeah.
Fully dressed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But he did love children. He loved all the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the goals that we met was when Father Jim announced that they were going to remove Father Jim, and out of clear blue, we paid off the mortgage here. And all the discussion that went around on how that happened, it just blows my mind. It was a lot of money, and
Well, he paid a big
all of
chunk
a
of
sudden,
it.
pardon?
He paid for it.
Yeah, I was
think
gonna
so.
say Father Jim probably paid it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Father Jim always left me with the impression that his happiest day would be if he said Mass and came back into his office and went to heaven. That would have been his ideal ending for his life. And he never wanted to leave. He was always told that he was going to be, in parishioner life for the rest of his life. And he was very unhappy when they moved him over here, and he was very unhappy when he moved him out of here. And he let it be known that he wasn't happy because he. A misunderstood priest at times.
Mm-hmm.
I think just like Father Doyle was a misunderstood priest.
He's very spiritual. I will say that. I've,
And
talked to him
dedicated.
many times. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
He's
brought a lot of changes, a lot of good changes. I mean, as far as the interior of the church, moving stuff around, but when he wanted something done, he wanted it done like yesterday.
Yeah.
He makes a suggestion to you, and sometimes it's more than a suggestion. It's I want to have this done, but whatever you needed to do it, when resources, he would manage to take care of it.
He actually, I will say, Dave and Judy, who we talked about before, Judy passed away.
In
It'll
2022,
be 3 years.
in October.
3 years in October. And she and Dave they left here and still get teared up. So they kind of fell away from the church. And when Judy died, she went to Catholic school all the way through her life. She went to college at St. Joseph's in Ohio. And I said to Dave, what are you going to do? Are you going to have a mass at St. Lawrence or whatever? This is how I found out they kind of fell away. And he said no. So I called Father Tommy and I told him, I said, she was a big part of this church. I said, is there any way you can do a memorial mass? And he
texted you back.
He
within
texted me
5
back
minutes.
immediately
Yeah.
and said, when do you want to have it and what time? And, he was fine. And he even had us, those of us who knew her so well, write some some things about her so he could talk about her during the service. So Dave just thought that was amazing that, you know, he was going to do that for somebody that hadn't been to church here in probably over 15 years. But he did it. And he actually came to Wages, because that's where her service was. He came to Wages and said a few things there. And then, what was it, 2 weeks later, I guess, we had the memorial service here.
Yeah. And then you know how they used to put, I thought they still did it, they put the plaque up on the altar with all the people that had passed away.
He put her name on that.
They added her name to it.
On that plaque,
Yeah.
or the year
Yeah.
that she passed away. So that was when I thought, you know, he did that selflessly. He didn't even know the woman.
Yeah, very dedicated, and you know, he was head of the Franciscans in the United States for 6 years while he was here, and he had both balls in the air all the time. He really wouldn't. I'm sure his staff would know that, but probably overworked him. But he just kept it going. You know, that's a heck of a responsibilities that he had.
Father Tommy has probably, from what we've seen in the parish, made more structural changes, I think, for the better that we've seen here. He converted the hall from a multi-use to a professional-looking building for both weddings, receptions, parties, etc. He changed the parish church, where we have a crying room, which was a big need that neither of the three prior pastors did, nor did the building committee put one in, because Father Don and Father Brendan Doyle did not want a crying room in the back, so it wasn't designed in. He's also done a tremendous change in the electronic changes to what we do here. If you take a look at the multimedia room in the back, we have the Mass now is online, and so he's done a lot of changes in that. For security, for the outside of the church, he's done a lot in enhancing security by putting cameras, lights, etc. So there's been a lot of changes, I think, that he's made with a limited budget that he had. He was the first pastor to go out and ask for people to sponsor or donate things that the parish couldn't afford. For example, the multimedia room. If you take a look at the multimedia room, there's a bunch of plaques on there of people who donated money. There are statues around the parish where people have donated. For example, the Blessed Mother statue outside the rectory was donated by a parishioner. The flagpoles were donated by parishioners. Where the parish couldn't afford to do that, there was an improvement that was needed for the parish, for the most part, for everybody. And he found ways of getting different parishioners who could afford it and were interested in donating for those things.
Hey, do you guys remember we had the fish down here and that big?
Yeah.
Oh, man, you know, Natalie was young, our daughter was young. After church, man, we had to go see those fish every Sunday. We had to go see them.
that put that together?
I don't know.
It was somebody had a project, wasn't it?
Yeah, project.
But it was awesome.
Yeah.
They were big koi or something. I
Yes,
don't remember.
yes, they
It
were
was
koi.
beautiful. And then I forget what priest said, just gotta go, or he was afraid somebody would drown. And he said, just had to go, so.
Back when we were doing, after the flood and all that, and I was Ramrod and all these guys were involved with, but I think
Pipes
it was,
froze and broke.
oh,
Oh, man.
that was
we
Father
were
Jim
flooded.
did that, but,
Oh, we were flooded bad.
There was no insulation in that end of the building.
Is that where the flood started down there?
yeah.
And I know that Hank and Floyd and other people told Father that it needed to be done. And
He didn't believe it.
It didn't, well, I'm sure it was probably a matter of money and everything else, but we had that horrible cold that came through and it flooded, and a lot of people, a lot of nights, got together and came out and did a lot of work to fix it. But that was just an unfortunate situation.
We were closed for a long time.
Yeah.
Yes, true. Every light fixture in this building, 3 guys Carl Wagner, myself, and Floyd, every fixture in this building we had to rewire, and it was a total mess. And then we were shut down here for what, like 9 months? That was a long time.
I know it was a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost a year.
Was it?
The Polish community used to be by themselves and a private affair, but now it's more diverse and they're more being assimilated into the parish as a whole. I mean, you take a look now at the fish fries. You see the Polish community coming in and now they're helping with the fish fries. The Pierogi Festival has expanded out to include more people. But when there's a work day or whatever it is, you see the Polish community along with the non-Polish community parishioners coming in. And so I think they're assimilating themselves into what we're doing now. And as time goes on, I think more and more as the Polish community grows, I think they're going to be helping us as a parish as a whole. We still have the Polish Pierogi Festival, and we've had some outstanding Polish priests who have really made a contribution to the parish, whether it's the Polish community and some of the things they do, or the Polish priests and how they're helping out. The Polish community is a major advantage for our parish and has made a major contribution to the parish in things that we may not see. Storefront, I think the first historical significance was the purchase of the original land, where the footprint of the original location was, which included only one rectory, which was I call it the old rectory, which is the one is to the right of the current parish now, and where the Polish community and Father Don Karen lived together. The next significant, I think, was the purchase of the new rectory property and the property between the old rectory and where we are now. That opened up a tremendous amount of ability to expand. It gave us property for expansion for a new church if we needed it. It gave us the garden where we have some meditation. We've had Easter Sunday morning masses there for many years at 6:30 in the morning. We had sunrise services there. I think the next biggest significant change is what Father Tommy did in the hall and in changing the church and bringing the crucifix from in the ceiling to the back wall. In addition to, I think, expanding the international community and bringing a priest that could help service the international community.
Father Jim was just, it's like a father, you know, he was just there. Doyle was just a good old boy. And then Father Don, he was a very,
He was awesome.
awesome guy.
Awesome.
We've had good priests here in this parish. That's one of the things that we've been blessed with.
You know, this is a great place. If people come over and try it, I think they generally realize just what it, to me, it's not a St. John Newman, it's not a St. Lawrence, it's a small community of people, and that's what I was looking for, and I love it.
Dear parish family, today we rejoice and thank God as we celebrate the 30th anniversary of our parish, St.Marguerite de Yeovil, our second home. We give thanks to God for His abundant blessings over the years and for the faith, love, and dedication of all who have built and sustained this faith community. For 3 decades, this parish has been a place of prayer, faith, and community, a spiritual home where countless hearts have been nourished by God's word and sacraments. On this special occasion, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all who have built, nurtured, and sustained this parish with faith, love, and service. Pastors, leaders, volunteers, and every family who has been part of this journey. Thus today, we honor our past with gratitude, live our present with joy, and look to the future with hope. May this celebration help us to renew our commitment. And may the years to come be filled with renewed faith, deeper unity, and a stronger witness to Christ's love to all. Happy 30th anniversary, and may God continue to bless our parish family for many more years to come.
Okay, Linda and David went.
As Linda, I'm David.
It's amazing what you look like when you're young. Got the layout for the chest.
That's incredible.
For doing the pews. We had to figure out how to do the pews, but that's not. What'd you ask me?